So just a little bit about what we're doing. My name is Jess. I work for the Entrepreneurship Institute. I manage, among a few other things, our Women Entrepreneurs Network, about bringing gender parity onto King's 20, our business accelerator. So all of the women we've got sharing their ventures and disruptions with you today are either have been on King's 20 or on King's 20 currently, and have lots of exciting, cool things to say. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So should we start with you, Aysha?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Aysha. I am the founder of Muslima, which is the first app of its kind for Muslim women, helping to balance faith and life with just a tap on the smartphone. I was a medical student at King's and I was part of the King's 20 Accelerator 3 years ago. I'm currently working as a junior doctor.
Pahini?
Hi everyone, I'm Pahini. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Panakeia Technologies. We're building AI-driven solutions for cancer diagnosis that can eliminate the need for lab-based tests. So what this means is today it takes days to weeks to get a proper cancer diagnosis and inform what treatment works. With our platform, you can get the exact same results in a matter of minutes instead of days.
Amazing. Thank you. And Olga, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's lovely to be with all of you today. My name is Olga and I'm CEO and co-founder of Muslima, an immersive learning platform for children to engage with arts and culture. I was a part of King's 20 cohort probably 4 years ago, and I did my master's degree in arts and cultural management at King's as well. So I have a long story with King's, but I have more stories about disruption and entrepreneurship. So I'm looking forward to talk about it today.
Amazing. And Nitya?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Nitya, and I am the co-founder of Do Medical, and we are building innovative technologies in the space of femtech, more specifically menopause. So we have built a smart wearable device that alleviates symptoms of hot flashes, which is one of the most disruptive symptoms of menopause. I just graduated from King's with a biomedical engineering degree, and I'm currently on the King's 20. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, exciting. Thank you so much for just sharing that. So what I really want to start with, I know we're focusing on disruption, is how do you feel like the business, the venture that you work on? So I know some of you have had various iterations of your business or worked for smaller other ventures as well. But how do you feel like you have built disruption into your business? Like whether it was on purpose or whether it was just something that came from the idea that you actually have. So how do you disrupt?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, cool.
So I think the fact that we were there's sort of thousands of Islamic apps on the market and there's millions of dollars between them, but there wasn't one specifically aimed for women and looking into their needs, specifically when it came to faith, because there are different requirements for women. And I think just being loud and proud about the fact that, you know, we 50% of the so the Muslim community out there is what we were focusing on, and we were proud of the fact that we were supporting Muslim women and their needs. I felt there was a lot of, once we were launching and we were when the word was going out, there was a lot of talk about, you know, well, what about the other half of the Muslim community? And it was, I mean, the disruption was the fact that, well, actually, no, it is difficult being a Muslim woman and having to balance faith and day-to-day life. And there's more stigma when it comes to women doing certain things. So it was, that's the sort of disruption that we found when I was first building Muslima and what our identity was and what we were going to do. There was a lot of a lot of feedback with regards to that when we were first sort of starting out. So that was, yeah. But as you know, sort of time goes on you actually realize that there are other things out there that sort of specifically focus on women, that it sort of gets easier as you get along, and it's quite easy. It's you got used to sort of just being disruptive as the process being gone and being unique and different as well.
So you get to use being disruptive. How about you, Pahini?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for us, disruption wasn't necessarily intentional as it was about driving value. And to that end, basically, I mean, my background has been in cancer research. I spent nearly 7 years at King's doing a master's, working there, and then doing my PhD. All in the cancer space. So there are, I was very focused on driving value in the cancer space. I knew that there were challenges out there, but there were also a lot of different solutions. What that meant was starting to get a very, very good understanding of what your customers really, really need. Oftentimes understanding, speaking to them, asking them, can you just tell me about your workday? What are some of the big challenges that you face? What keeps you awake at night? Building that understanding, and then building an understanding of who are all the other people who are impacted by those things. Patient is a great example, right? We took the patient journey and then spoke to everybody who was involved in treating that patient to identify points. And then we figured out, looked at the space, figured out what were the solutions which were already addressing some of these issues and what were the issues that were not being addressed, and then came up with a solution. But then it's pretty similar to your story, in the sense that once you start doing that, it becomes more of a habit. So you just keep thinking about how are you constantly making changes, are you constantly driving value, and what's the best way to drive that value. One thing to bear in mind is also, at times, the harder part is as we grow and as we scale, we will also have to keep in mind there will be things we will need to eliminate in order to continue driving disruption. But yeah, that's just, it's more of a mindset at the end of the day. And as you build your team of like-minded people, you end up ingraining that in your culture.
I love that. So it very much is a mindset. I think that's one of the things that we really focus on, and it can be part of any venture at all. Like, I mean, you've all got very different ventures. Like, how do you feel it fits into Musemio, Olga?
That's a brilliant question. And Pahini, thank you so much for talking about the mindset. I think that the growth mindset, what we like talking about, you actually understand what it means much later in your journey when you actually reflect on what's been happening and what you were doing along this time. I think for me, the disruption was all about questioning the status quo and trying to understand more about how we can personalize arts and culture. I mean, I'm a big advocate for arts and culture. Ask me about any museum or about an artwork, and you will not be able to shut me up. I will just keep talking for hours. But what I noticed was in my friends, and later when I had this aha moment when my little brother ran away from me in the museum, I realized that culture is actually not one fit for all. And we had amazing opportunity for personalization in film, in music, in theater, in concerts, we can choose. But when it comes to a museum, or when it comes to understanding the world around us, the way it's being displayed, it was designed pretty much for arts professionals. So no wonder that a 12-year-old would just run away from me in the exhibition. One of the most inspiring and embarrassing moments of my life. So I think for me, the disruption was on challenging the ways the museums have worked for the last 300 years. And it was pre-COVID. So now you see a lot of stuff happening online. And I'm one of the most excited people about this change, because finally a very archaic industry has started moving forward towards this idea of personalization, towards removing the barriers that included museum walls. I mean, unless you were born next to Natural History Museum, it's very unlikely your parents would take you to a museum every month. And in fact, when we are working with some kids who are coming from rural parts of England, they've never been to a museum because simply it's not accessible. So for me, it was about challenging the assumptions that has been there for 300 years, trying to find the champions and supporters within the industry that didn't want to change, and now driving this kind of wave of change in a way that still fits towards their mission and vision, because I never had an interest to change the core mission, but more create a new space and show them the new opportunities, what can be done if you actually challenge the status that they had. So I think the disruption for me started with an idea, and with my little brother, who's now 18 years old, and he's doing spacecraft operations in the US. I can't believe it.
Wow. Pretty innovative as well, to be fair. That's quite disruptive.
He is. He's a clever one in our family, I would say. And yeah, I think it was all about trying to understand what can we do better and how can we think outside of the box to make the solutions that will fit the new generation, the generations that is not like us, the next generations that won't be like the generation before. So yeah, sorry for a bit of a philosophical answer.
No, that's a great answer. Like, I mean, I know you've all saying before we let everybody in that you both, three of you felt like you've been on King's 20 a little bit longer ago. But how about, so what do you think about the future of that? Then Nitya, what do you think about what kind of going on from what Olga said, how you've built innovation and disruption into your into CoolZEN and Room Medical, but also that disruption and what is disruptive is going to change with different generations, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think my journey started off a little different in the sense that I was chasing innovation. That's what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure what I wanted to innovate in, but I knew I wanted to innovate. I knew I wanted to create impact on someone for the better. And I think that's how I started looking into essentially in the healthcare space, because that's what I was studying, how I could create some kind of change and use my knowledge to kind of make that happen. And that's when I stumbled upon menopause. And I thought menopause was a very simple thing, happens to everyone, just like menstruation. And there couldn't really be more to it. Right? And it would be a great dream for someone to stop menstruating. It's just fun after that. There's no more monthly cramps, nothing. And that's all I thought it was. And then when I started looking into it, I realized it had so many symptoms associated with it that women practically felt like it was the end of their life. Like they would rather just, keep having their menstrual periods every month than go through menopause, because it was that torturous for some of them. And that's when I started looking into it more. And we realized that just like Olga was mentioning, that it's a very personalized experience. So every single woman has her own menopause journey in a very, very different way. And that's something that we kind of captured when we spoke to hundreds of women all around the world, not just UK. And we realized we need to create something that was smart enough to incorporate someone's personal preferences and journey of menopause. And that's when we created CoolZEN, which is a smart device. So it alleviates a very common symptom of menopause, but it alleviates it differently for each woman based on her specific journey. So that way, I feel like I always say that our product was not the design of just 2 or 3 minds. It was more of like 300 minds, because that's the number of people we spoke to and got feedback from before we really reached a solution. We just dove into the problem, and that's why every step of the way for us has only been trying to make it better, incorporate more change, and I know that's what we're going to continue doing.
Amazing. I mean, as you were saying, like some of the you and Aysha especially, and predominantly I think for you, Pahini, is that you will predominantly be creating things that are for other women. So how do you feel? Like, this is a bit of a fluffy question, but I think it's got a really good potential for good answers, which is, what do you think is the best part of being a woman who is disrupting entrepreneurship as a whole? You're looking at me a little bit like, I don't know the answer to this. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I personally, I work for the Entrepreneurship Institute, so I would say that I enjoy seeing the impact that women have on a business that is still very male driven, and creating different versions of what success looks like. So that to me is like one of the most powerful disruptive things women are doing, beyond just your gender. And I appreciate you have so much more complexity behind that, but just to explore that experience of being a woman disruptor in a very male dominated space.
I mean, I can build on top of that. I think it's you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I think that one of the big things is, from my perspective, the things that I really enjoy about being a women disruptor is the ability to make an impact. And I think it's not just whether you're a woman or not, right? It's the ability to make an impact, a difference in people's lives. That's the most exciting thing that drives me every day. I wake up every morning thinking, oh my God, the thing that I'm doing is going to save lives, right? It's going to change lives. That's what drives me, and that's what I personally find really, really exciting. But yeah, I'd love to see what other thoughts are.
If you don't mind, I'll chip in on that. I think that impact that you make as an entrepreneur is definitely one of the biggest drivers. And for me, when people are like, what's your favorite part of entrepreneurship? And I'm like, seeing the child smile after they've been through experience. It's like nothing else really compares with this feeling when the child is like, oh, I've just been to ancient Egypt. And obviously they're in their own living room and you're like, I literally made it happen. And obviously we won't be able to see the effect yet on how these experiences will eventually change their journeys, their lives, how they would be opened to different opportunities potentially, because that's pretty much the mission of Museumia, sparking the interest by allowing access to arts and culture for every child. So I think that the impact part is always very important. And even if you feel like the world is about to fall apart, remembering these little moments really helps. When it worked, when you've seen people smiling, when you've seen people reacting, when you've seen people saying that that's what I need. In our case, that's when kids say, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'll just do Museumia. That does excite me a little bit. But also, I think another bit that is more specific to female entrepreneurship, I found peer-to-peer support networks the most amazing things that I've had in the last couple of years, especially during the lockdown. I mean, my entire life changed. We lost the office. Everyone was working from home. I had to move to another city, and the community that has been created by other women entrepreneurs were just absolutely amazing. And I think there is something very liberating sometimes when you're the part of those discussions to know that everyone is having the same issues. Like all of us is going through the imposter syndrome, and all of us are trying to figure out the new ways to tackle it. And all of us are happy to share their feedback, but sometimes it really helps to be like, okay, I'm feeling really sad today. And then there is another female entrepreneur who's saying, I felt the same yesterday, but after a couple of hours, I'm back on the track, I'm back on my mission. And I think that really lights me up. So I'm very grateful for being the part of the women innovators in any of the communities. And there are so many of them.
Amazing.
I'm going to just echo what was just said. I think I remember when I first started on Muslima, I was really much working on myself. And then once I sort of entered, sort of made it more public, and it was part of the King's Entrepreneur Institute. There was a lot of focus on the fact that I'm a woman and I'm doing what I was doing, and it's not really a space. I think I became more aware of the fact that actually that there isn't that many women founders who get funding, and I think that attention that I got, it slightly did sort of throw me off. Just thought, okay, there's very few people doing what it is I'm doing, and maybe it's not meant for me. And I started questioning whether I was sort of the right person to do it, to basically do a startup. And then I think what was mentioned about the fact that there are women's network, and the great thing, we have qualities that men don't have. So things like the fact that we can talk to each other, it's so easy to express and communicate with each other, whereas sometimes it takes a while for our male counterparts to open up and connect with people and share problems and advice. I mean, we do this on a regular, we give advice without even knowing we're giving advice out. And so many times you have a problem and you think no one's going through it, and then like you just mentioned, someone has just gone through it and they're very happy to help. And so I think then joining the sort of women's network especially the one at King's, which I'm sure Jessica will mention. I lost my train of thought for a second. But you embrace the fact that you're a woman entrepreneur, and you celebrate that, and you're changing the face. We are, because of what the King's 20 is aiming for, we are sort of changing the face of what an entrepreneur looks like, what an entrepreneur sounds like, and when we were, and then when you do have those moments where so we had a 13-year-old girl reach out to us and say, thank you for making an app for me, and it's helped me do this, and then she listed a bunch of ideas of how we can improve Muslima. And I just remember thinking, at 13, I didn't even know you could email a company, and bless her, she felt confident enough to tell me what sort of changes she wanted, and then so you have moments like that, knowing that actually the work you're putting in is coming through, and it is sort of benefiting your users, and you are making an impact in whatever way possible, whether it's small things such as balancing faith and life, or
that's not a small thing though. Not a small thing,
I mean,
necessarily.
as a doctor, I totally relate to, if you can have a test that will tell me in minutes that someone has cancer, that will help me a lot when it comes to treating and diagnosing and treating someone. But it is, of course. I mean, we're all doing great things as well. And I'm just nodding my head along, going, oh, I actually want to do, put on a headset and be in ancient Egypt. If you could put me in Tudor England, I'd love that. I love Tudors when I was cool. But yeah, so it's actually
cross collaborations going on. Love that. Nitya, do you have anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think three of you mentioned a lot of important things that I completely agree with, but I think my biggest takeaway is definitely impact. Seeing, we actually tested the device on this woman in London just a couple of weeks ago, and she had it for 2 days, and she came back to return it to me, and she was literally clutching onto it, and she's like, can I please keep this and like take it on vacation with me, because I'm going to Greece. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but I need to take it back. But I think just seeing how much it could change someone's life when she said, I had a full night's of sleep after, say, a couple of years is huge. It would make such a big difference in someone's life. And I think creating that kind of impact is just, you can't take away from that. Like, that's, like Pahini said, that's what you wake up to every day, and you're so happy that you're doing that. It's really rewarding. But I think I would also echo what Aysha said about the fact that you get a lot of attention when you're a woman entrepreneur. People do mention, oh, you're a woman and you're also an entrepreneur, you should be really proud. And when you hear the statistics about less than 3% of women-founded companies actually getting VC back, that's a very, very low percentage. So being in that space is obviously a huge kind of responsibility as well, to be able to create that network, be able to inspire everyone else to do the same. But I think I still do have a little bit of imposter syndrome about the fact that, can I really do it? Like, am I cut out for this? But I'm sure it'll go away very soon. But yeah, it's very rewarding more than anything.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a quick thought around the networks, because obviously we talked a lot about the peer-to-peer networks, and the female community is amazing. But I also wanted to highlight that it's not just female community. Like, the minute you become the woman entrepreneur, there are so many people who want to support you. And I think I was reading a very interesting study about the nature of collaboration. And Aysha, you mentioned something, that women are a little bit more collaborative and open at the very beginning, and it takes time to build relationship with the male counterparts. But I know that one of our best advisors, best friends who are within the entrepreneurship and business community are male. And it's like, I think it's just also important sometimes to highlight that it's not just about the female support networks that we have. And it's amazing that there are some, because they're helping people to feel a bit more comfortable, because sometimes it's a little bit scary to enter the world of big white males. That's just the nature. We know that generally they get more funding, and that's how we see entrepreneurship being shaped. And I'm very happy that we are here disrupting the status quo and saying, hey, we're all different and all of us are entrepreneurs, disruptors and innovators. But I think it's important to also sometimes think about the inclusiveness of entrepreneurship, because most of the people I've met had a wonderful and beautiful mindset. And this is what really makes the entire process of building a venture so rewarding, whether you build a unicorn or you end up having a lifestyle business or you just end up going through a learning phase.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I would also say, though, to add is that as much as this is a women's disruptors panel, and I don't want to create a monolithic experience of all of you as a woman entrepreneur. And the reason I'm asking you is because I think you've all got different aspects of your experiences and entrepreneurial journeys that show the complexity of the different things that different women go through. You're in different sectors, well, some of you are in overlapping sectors, but the different sectors, the different elements of that, you do have things in common. But I agree with Aysha in the sense that I've seen with the Women Entrepreneurs Network a lot as well, is that women are very generous about giving their time to discuss. You've all come here today, for example, you've all inherently become a role model for this specific occasion because you are visible women in entrepreneurship. And I'm really glad you are, personally, which sounds really silly, but I think if we maybe focus again though, like, for example, what do you think, if we look at entrepreneurship as a whole, like being a woman is a disruptive thing and I love it. What other disruptions do you think and other innovations do you think are needed to properly disrupt and change how entrepreneurship as a whole currently looks? Like, what do you think is the next, not next, but another important aspect that needs disrupting?
So I think what I was very lucky, like my pivotal moment, the reason why I am today running the company for the last 3 years, having all the experiences I've had, is because I had a very strong support network at the beginning, and it was King's 20. When I started thinking about running a business, never in my life I thought that I'm going to be a businesswoman. It was literally the last thing I imagined myself doing. Like, I think I imagined myself being more, it was more realistic for me to start working in banking, even though I'm coming from arts and culture, than actually starting a business. And I think I was super lucky to have the initial support network of people who just kept on pushing me, even though I wasn't a part of any formal accelerator at this point, just like people who were willing to share their advice. And after, obviously, I had King's 20 and it's networks, it's understanding, it's learning new skills, it's developing your mindset. But obviously it comes back to having a very good university behind you and being able to be the part of this university. And I think when we are looking about the inclusion in the entrepreneurship, there are still a lot of people who won't be able to get an opportunity to even try to become an entrepreneur because they didn't necessarily get a university degree. It's because they didn't necessarily been exposed to the networks that are usually centered around the capital. I mean, it's becoming easier with now the world going online, but you need to have certain qualities and you need to have certain self-confidence to actually put yourself out there, and not having someone holding you back, it's really, really scary. So I think that what needs to happen, there should be more initiatives that are focusing on people who have not gone through universities, who have graduated from college, or maybe they haven't even graduated from college. It doesn't really matter. It's about giving them this transferable entrepreneurial skills that they can apply, whether to starting their own business or choosing a career in any of the spaces they want. One of the very good examples that I know is just launching, there is an accelerator opening specifically for design startups as part of the design museums. And they're specifically focusing on underrepresented groups and how they can provide the opportunity for these groups to get access to mentoring, to get access to this initial support. Because I don't know if I would be sitting here, probably not, if I didn't have 20 champions telling me, Olga, every day, Olga, you can do it. You can run a business. And for me, the biggest thing was like, I just didn't have business skills. They taught me everything. So I think that's one of the aspects of the inclusion that is not necessarily being addressed yet.
Great. Anybody else got something they want to add to that? I'm interested to see what disruptions you think we can shake up the world of entrepreneurship with, or innovations. I mean, they might not even exist. You might not even know what they are. That might be the problem with that question.
I think just something that I mentioned earlier, the sense of changing the face of entrepreneurship, but just having more people, more sort of representative sort of faces of who are sort of entrepreneurs, would be something that would definitely have made it easier for me when I was starting out, when I was in a room full of people who looked nothing like me, sounded nothing like me, and sort of showcasing that more. And, you know, so I'm not necessarily the only sort of hijab woman on a panel or at an event, for instance. That I think would be, yeah, that's something I think, but I think that is slowly starting to happen as well. And so, yeah, so I think that's one way.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to add by saying, kind of echoing what Olga mentioned towards the end about the fact that I think I would go with the tagline, experience is overrated, only because I started this when I was still studying my undergraduate degree. And I think most people that I've spoken to or had a chance to meet were kind of, when I said that I just graduated, the immediate question was, oh, did you just graduate a PhD? And I would be like, oh no, I haven't done that yet. And that made me feel like, oh, maybe I'm not experienced enough, especially in the field of healthcare, where a lot of it is very much based on the kind of experience you have and how much academic qualification you have. So in that sense, I do feel like promoting the fact that you don't necessarily need to have huge amounts of experience in the field that you want to get into. If you really want to disrupt, if you really want to innovate, there's always a way to do it. You just need to love the problem enough and work hard enough to find a solution.
Amazing.
Actually, Nitya, what you said really hits home, because I spent, a long time in academia. I'd done a PhD, I've done a postdoc. And then when I was considering entrepreneurship, I didn't feel I was ready for it. I had done a couple of courses, but what I did realize after founding Panakeia was that no matter how much I would have studied, how much work experience I would have had, I would have never been ready for entrepreneurship. The beauty of entrepreneurship is that you learn by doing. And that was something, I only realized because I took the leap. Otherwise, I would have, kept putting it off. And that brings me to my point is, like, I think one of the big changes that we need, we're starting to see elements of it there, is a mindset change. It goes back to mindsets, right? It's all about how do we think about entrepreneurship? What is normal? There is no normal. We are in a world where we think that there are certain things which are normal, but in reality, every person is different. More often than not. And this is where your issues around diversity and inclusion come in. You need to have a good degree, good understanding, and good acceptance of different viewpoints. Be as inclusive as you can, and be open to new experiences. That's what I would say is perhaps one of the big things that needs to change. But I also do resonate with Olga's point around having support around, or facilitating underrepresented founders to actually start businesses of their own. King's 20 was there at the right time. When I joined, I said, look, I don't have a co-founder. I may not have a co-founder. I have an idea I'm working on. And in parallel, I had also joined this other program called Entrepreneur First, which actually helped me find a co-founder. But the amazing part of joining that program was I was actually paid a living stipend, which allowed me to continue my journey of finding the co-founder, right? There's always a cash flow issue. Not everybody comes from, very good, rock solid backgrounds, which means not everybody can take the same level of risk. So initiatives which de-risk entrepreneurship and make it more accessible to a wide range of entrepreneurs as well is definitely needed.
Amazing. That's really interesting that you say that. So thinking about your co-founder, then how did you trust them? Like when you met them, how did you know they were the one? Because I mean, it's such a disruptive and sometimes quite a lonely thing to be running a business on your own. I appreciate that. But I know that at least two of you have got co-founders. I'm not sure. Aysha, do you have a co-founder now as well? Or are you just a solo founder?
Solo founder.
Yeah. And Musemio, I know. So how did you find other people? I know you've just mentioned this, Pahini, but how did the rest of you find your co-founders, that's someone who's equally as willing to disrupt and take that risk, as much as we'd like to get rid of the risk, but how did you find them?
Yeah, I can take this. I basically met my co-founder because we overheard each other talking in the cafeteria about how we wanted to do something by ourselves and create some impact. So it was a very funny way in which we met, and we realized we had very similar vision for what we wanted to do for ourselves and in terms of our career, and we wanted to take that leap. And we basically just took it together. We became friends in the process, and yeah, that's how we kind of came together.
That's amazing. That's like a really beautifully natural, organic conversation as well. How about, so go on. No,
yeah, we happen to be studying the same thing as well. So we were briefly acquainted to each other, but we didn't really know each other well. So it worked out that we had, I guess, balancing skill sets as well. So apart from just getting along and having similar mission and goals, we also kind of liked equally different things and the same stuff. So we could complement each other well.
That's amazing. Olga, you're not just a solo founder at Musemio, are you? Or are you?
Well, I have a team. I have an amazing technical team with me, and I have a couple of people who are helping me with sales and partnerships. I think entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey, and the biggest value of the co-founders, most of the cases, is being able to share the vision and share the risk. And also, I think it's also being able to believe into something that is very likely to fail. Like this little element of the positivity that glues co-founders together is like a true magic, because you're like, this will never work. But then you give it a try, and in 1 of 100 chances it works. And that's what changes the way you're running the company, you're changing the world. It doesn't matter what it is, but this shared belief in the vision and that what if could actually change the course of history. I think that's what's very important to maintain within the leadership team for sure, but also within your team as you start expanding, like what is the big thing that we are trying to do. And it's really hard, especially with technical teams. Like I know that my technical team, if something goes wrong, they will work until they figure out the issue. And obviously I'm all about work-life balance, and I think all of us are trying to look after each other, but you need to have this belief that if sometimes, not always, because if everything is going wrong all the time, there is something wrong with your business. But if sometimes there is an emergency and all of you need to have all the hands on the deck, it's important to know that you will be supported, because otherwise, you just end up talking to your screen or to your dog. So
amazing. That's very true. Some of you have touched a little bit on this and how you started your journey, and I think that's really important. And I recognize all of you are at different points of your entrepreneurial journey, and I think that really highlights that it's not, especially as an entrepreneur, one of the most disruptive things is not having a linear idea of a journey. It can go one way and the other. So what do you think, in context of that, would have been the most pivotal part of your journey so far?
I can go there. I mean, for me, the journey to entrepreneurship has been more of, a series of light bulb moments. When I realized, I wanted to make a big impact. I wanted to make an impact faster than academia could allow, and so on. But one of the most pivotal moments came when I was doing my PhD in cancer biology, and during my PhD, I had my own personal cancer scare. I had to wait for nearly a whole month to get an all clear. That experience made me realize the challenges that patients go through. So I actually had that patient experience. I was sat there for a whole month, not knowing whether I had cancer or not. I was going back to the lab, doing experiments, looking at the stats around cancers, right, and outcomes. It wasn't very encouraging. It was very scary. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't know how I'd tell my parents and my near and dear ones about it if I had cancer, right? And then I would sit for hours in the waiting room every time I visited the oncologist, talking to other patients and hearing about their stories. What I also did realize every time I did those lab experiments was the frustrations that doctors had and the people who were running those lab assays had, because these are not easy things to do. The tools that they're using are not perfect. The tools that they're using are complex, they're challenging. So that for me made me realize, oh my God, there are problems on every different, at every different space. How do I solve it? That was a pivotal moment where I realized I actually had to do something now, because cancer doesn't wait for anyone. Whilst doing cancer research was great, I genuinely felt compelled to apply my scientific expertise and knowledge into translating that to real world applications in a much more sensible and reasonable time. So that's how I started seriously considering other avenues, and entrepreneurship came out at the top.
Amazing. That's a really powerful way of like showing, using your own personal experience to make a very, very valuable change. Amazing, thank you. Anybody else want to add to that, or your pivotal part of your journey?
I think I'm going to echo that in a small way, that I think speaking to women that were actually affected by that problem, any specific problem for that matter, not just menopause, I think that was kind of firing light bulbs in my head. That's when I realized that I actually have, I have the way to, and the will and the time, the amount of knowledge, the faith that I can put in myself to actually create something. And I would love to create that impact for someone who is not in a position to. Just for a small statistic example, around 1 million women just in the UK have quit their jobs because of menopausal symptoms. And that's a huge number of women that have to literally disrupt their entire career just because of something that's natural. It's not something that happens to only few of us, it happens to all of us. And I think learning about this and speaking to so many women and understanding how they have had to essentially just go back to their houses and sit without doing anything when they were probably at the prime of their career in their early 40s or their late 30s, when they're really growing and they're sitting in board meetings and they're having to kind of run out because they're having a hot flash, does not sound good at all. Like that would ruin everything that they've worked for, and it takes away the sense of purpose that many of these women kind of have. It would for me if I could not go and do what I love. And I think that was pivotal for me to kind of create a solution. So that's where the idea was born, and that's when I decided to make the leap.
Aysha, you look like you're about to say something, but
Now, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and they sort of say that the best part of your life is when you're 40. I just recently learned this. I thought, the best part of your life is when you're 40, but imagine having to go through that. And so I think I'll just echo what was already said about you get multiple light bulb moments sort of when you talk to people, and when what depending on what people say, and so many sort of discussions that I've had where someone said something and something goes off, you don't realize that that conversation was going to produce that moment. I think the most pivotal moment for me was I think we were told this a lot, is that you have assumptions, but you don't know whether your assumption is going to be correct or not until you sort of put it out to market. And you could sort of forecast what things are going to be like, but until you put your product out there, people are using it, can you actually say you've actually validated your idea? And I think we had I wanted to launch with a few features, and if for that to have happened, that would have taken about 2-3 years for the app to have been developed and tested for launch. And when it was suggested by someone in the King's Entrepreneur Institute, well, why don't you just launch with one feature and see just if the concept of a only Islamic app only for Muslim women hits off and takes off. And so then we could slowly build on it according to what our users want as well. And so that we went from like supposedly launching in 3 years to about 6 months. And and once there was we could see the demand, we could see the interest that there is that they had for Islamic app for Muslim women, not just in the UK but around the world. We're just in the UK for now. That sort of gave you the sort of confidence and motivation that we are sort of working in the right space, and it validated our idea about an app just specifically for Muslim women, and they want that personalization and they want that need. So that was one of the very biggest pivotal moments that we had when it comes to validating idea, launching, and then having the confidence to continue with our vision.
Amazing. Olga, you're about to say something as well.
I think that in terms of the pivotal journeys, for me, I guess there were a lot of small pivots, obviously, when we were building the app, when we were launching the app, when we were testing with kids, and when we were trying to make sure that the app actually speaks to their needs and actually does what we intended to achieve. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I was given actually by Ed Halliday, who was running Entrepreneurship Institute back when I was a part of King's 20, he said, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. And since then, this was like my little mantra that has resonated with me throughout my entire journey, that whenever you're trying to make a change, sometimes we don't want to open our eyes because we just love the product so much, because we spent so much time building it. And it's important to come back to this moment when you're like, okay, so what am I actually trying to do? And who will be using it, and why it is important for them, not for me? Because sometimes we can be very protective of our little babies that we are creating, that they're growing.
Yeah.
So even though it's not a pivot, but I think it was a very important piece of advice that have shaped my relationship with the product, and as a result, the relationship with my customer.
Amazing, thank you. We've had a few questions in the chat, and if anybody else has any, by all means, we've got about maybe just under 10 minutes left of the session. So if you've got a question to ask the panel, you can pop it in the chat, or if you want to turn your camera on, you're very welcome to. But I'm going to go with, this is from Hala, so she's given us a few questions. And Hala, I think you joined us for our Women Entrepreneurs Network session earlier today, so thank you for joining us again. So the first question is, how do you balance the sharing of information about what you do while still keeping your idea unique and not open to plagiarism?
I can take this question. I think that's a concern that I hear from most of the early stage entrepreneurs who might just have like a little idea. They don't actually have a product, they haven't tested with the market, but there are like a lot of anxiety that your idea might be stolen. This could be one of the barriers that would prevent you from actually meeting amazing people who will be your biggest supporters and who will share your mission. It's very hard, like ideas don't cost anything. It's the execution that actually counts. So if someone can reverse engineer your entire unicorn just by you having a 5-minute conversation, it's probably not as unique. And like, I'm not saying it as a criticism, I'm just saying it as a warning that sometimes by thinking that there are so many people who are trying to steal your idea, you prevent yourself from making these incredible serendipity moments that could only happen if you're open for sharing. And also something that keeps you kind of in check. I think according to statistics, there are at least 3 people in the world that are doing exactly what you're doing. So there is someone who's already executing on your idea. So maybe it just was kind of pushing it forward and trying to get a support network around.
Anybody else?
I think I just want to add one thing about how I think even though someone may have a similar idea, I think what would set you or anyone else apart would be the way you've arrived at that solution. So like Olga said, fall in love with the problem. You don't get that by talking to someone. You can't get that kind of inspiration or that love for putting your entire life into solving something for someone else if you don't really believe in it. So it's fine if you share your idea. Of course, if there is some intellectual property or anything like that, keep it close to you and share it with time. But I think ideas as such cannot be stolen. Like, it's the execution. Completely agree with that.
Yeah, 100% echo what Olga and Nitya said. It's all about the execution. It's rarely about the idea. I would say most of the ideas are not unique. Somebody will have thought of it in the past. Somebody will think of it in the future. So yeah.
I love that. Aysha, anything to add?
Totally what everyone said.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was looking at you, be like, yeah, I'm just agreeing with you. There's a few more questions from Hala. So what would you say has been the biggest barrier in your I can't say entrepreneurial stuff, I've said it so many times, entrepreneurial journey?
I don't mind going first. I think the biggest challenge for me was just time, because I was a student when I started Muslima, and I was working on it, and it was I think I was in my clinical years of medicine, which required me to travel an hour and a half each way to placement, and then revising for our exams, and then balancing Muslima and working as well. And then now when I was like, okay, I'm just working as a junior doctor now, that's it, like work, and I said one go, and I would finish at 5 o'clock, but you don't really finish at 5 o'clock, and I'll have the evening for Muslima and weekends and stuff, but it's not been like that, and for me it's been a juggling act, and I would have loved to have been brave enough to have taken a year out during medical school to have worked on Muslima, at least to dedicate my time to it, but it's difficult doing a balancing full-time job and working on a startup and or studying and working on a startup, but I still love it, so I'm still doing it. But yeah, that's for me one of my biggest challenges.
I think to just add to that, I actually ended up taking a year out. So I was actually meant to do my master's. I just graduated with my undergraduate degree and decided to take this full time. But I think it was difficult considering because I was an international student, I had visa restrictions. So I couldn't really stay in the UK anymore. I had to fly back home. So it was a big decision for me not to just drop my further studies, but to also essentially leave that country, come back home, and kind of start from scratch all over again, and do that here, because the community I'd built and all the work that we'd done on CoolZEN was all based out of UK, and now I had to kind of shift this entire thing to India, and this was all during the pandemic, so it just made it 10x harder, and it's hard to reach people online. It's harder, I would say, especially people you don't know. So it was it was a very interesting experience, really taught me to be patient. And I think now that the long 1.5 year wait was done, where I had to do everything online and I could go back to UK, do some work and come back as well, it felt worth it at the end, because I'm doing this full time now and it's going very well. So yeah, I think that was quite hard.
Anything else from anybody else? We've got one more question. If you don't want to answer this one, we could do a quick fire for the last 2 minutes that we've got. What would you tell your younger self, or what words, I guess, would you inspire your younger self who was about to start on this journey? So this is on this not easy climb up a steep mountain, but I'm going to say you're starting on a journey, because sometimes hopefully we're going to look at it in a positive light, but I can appreciate there's no entrepreneurial space that is easy. It's all a little bit, the reason it's not easy is you're pushing forward. So what would you tell your younger self who's about to start your journey? Pahini.
I would just say be persistent, don't give up. Yeah, that's one big learning I've had. And you cannot be an entrepreneur if you're not persistent, and if you're not dedicated. Amazing.
Olga, I'm just going to put you on the spot.
I think I would tell my younger self to start earlier. I just wish I've explored other business ideas as well and learned entrepreneurship skills when I was doing my BA, when I was doing my master's, because I kind of I had another startup before, but like right after my master's, I kind of like jumped into startups, and I learned as I was moving along. And there is a lot of support available for you as a student if you just wanted to experiment, to try, and you don't have much to lose in the first 2 years of your university. So it's definitely, if I could go back in time and tell myself, I would definitely do more. And I think with the business as it is now, I probably would encourage myself to try to fail, like to deliberately try and test as many crazy things as possible. Because even though, like, now I have a growth mindset, and when I say I have a growth mindset, it means that whatever comes my way, I'll take it and I'll figure out the way around it, and then I will come back stronger. That's like pretty much, that's a resilience in its best. But I think when you're just starting, I was very keen to ask as many questions as possible, and I was able to, that's how I grew my business, because like you could not shut me up. I would just be like, yeah, just tell me this and this and this and this and this and this. I just wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't really put a lot of things into practice in this very first year of the exploration before Museumia was actually a business. So I wish I did a little bit more of experimentation early on.
Amazing. Aysha, go. Boom.
I'll keep it really short, but I'll just say sort of believe in yourself, and the effort you put in will somehow one or another come through.
Amazing. Nitya.
I think I'll keep it very quick as well. I think just not to be like bogged down by hurdles, in the sense that a lot of things are going to keep going wrong, and you just have to try to fix them and keep moving on, and not get too, I guess, hold up into the fact that something's going wrong and not according to plan. That's probably every single thing that you do is probably not going to go to plan. So just be very, very quick to adapt. I think that's all I would say.
I love that. And on that fantastic note, I'm going to say thank you so much to all four of you, because you've been fantastic. I honestly couldn't have answered those questions, got anybody better to answer those questions. And again, I know you don't want to hear this, but you've become role models by doing this as well. So I really appreciate that you do that, as well as full-time jobs and entrepreneurship. So thank you very much for everyone joining, and thank you very much for all four of you. And yeah, so keep in touch if you want to. I'll put my details in the chat, and anybody who's watching, by all means, connect on LinkedIn with anybody here if you want to talk to them, or I'm sure you'll be open to that if you need to. And keep an eye on King's and the rest of the Festival of Disruptive Thinking, which is coming up until the 5th of November. So thank you very much, everybody. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.